Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you, everyone. It's truly an honor to have the opportunity to address all of you this evening. The Faculty Appreciation Dinner has always been one of my favorite Bellarmine events. It was at this dinner 11 years ago when I received my introduction to the Bellarmine community. At the invitation of then Principal John Murphy, I attended that year's dinner several weeks after being hired. That night, hearing so many people speak so eloquently about their love for this institution, I immediately cast aside any doubts I might have had about my decision. Tonight, I hope to continue that tradition of eloquence and pledge to infuse my talk with the same sort of dynamism that I bring to the weekly recycling announcement. Like many teachers at Bellarmine, I suffered through a first year that severely tested my resolve. In 1997, John Murphy offered me a contract to teach AP Environmental Science, Algebra 2, and C++, which I would later come to learn was some sort of computer language. In a shrewd bit of negotiating, I also managed to get speech and debate added into the mix as well. Clearly, I could not have survived that year without considerable help from my colleagues. I should begin with those of you kind enough to share your classrooms with me that year. To all four of you, I owe a significant debt. I should also mention Jim Harville, then Bellarmine's head speech and debate coach. If I was not the worst speech coach in Bellarmine history, I certainly was the sleepiest. However, Jim and the other speech and debate coaches proved kind and supportive, even when I took a busload of kids to a tournament that had been canceled several months before. And of course, I need to thank Chris Carey. Chris was not actually around my first few years at Bellarmine, except in a theoretical sort of way. In the sense of, wow, it sure would be nice if there was someone on campus who would fix these computers. Or, wow, it would be great to have a tech guy here who didn't treat me as if I killed his family pet. Yes, for several years, Chris was little more than an image in my head. When he did arrive with his personable nature and desire to always get everything exactly right, he greatly exceeded my expectations. And in the process, he has made my life considerably easier. And I would be remiss not to thank the man who hired Chris, Mr. Chris Meyercourt. Chris not only gets credit for keeping Bellarmine on the cutting edge in terms of technology, he also gets credit for forgiving a major faux pas early in my career. Back then, Chris Carey proposed some sort of software system for use in the computer labs. I thought this system was a bad idea, and I told Meyercourt so in no uncertain terms. Chris, I said, this idea doesn't make sense, adding that the plan was ridiculously short-sighted and crazy stupid. Turns out the idea was actually Chris Meyercourt's. So that was awkward. So I'd like to thank Chris for letting that go. Over the years, I've forgotten exactly what it was that you were proposing, or whether or not you decided to go with it, but I certainly applaud and appreciate your decision not to fire me. Okay, we're only a few minutes in, and already my speech has degraded into a thank you speech. You know, it's hard to write a 10-year speech without thanking people. I really did try to do so. Because the danger of a thank you speech is that you inevitably exclude some people that you should mention. In 5 or so minutes, I can't mention everyone that I should. So to prove that this is just a hodgepodge of thoughts in no particular order, I'm not going to thank Mark. It would be easy to thank Mark for the terrific work that he does, to mention his positive energy or the patience that he showed me as I dealt with some life challenges earlier this year, but I'm not going to do it. So that way, if anyone complains about not being thanked, I can say, hey, relax, I didn't even mention my own boss. So therefore, on with the thank yous. I'd like to thank the two Pauls, Paul Sheridan and Paul Spitzmuller, for spending 2 very different spring breaks with me over the past 2 years. Paul Sheridan worked with me in Tijuana, where we spent our days lifting enormous sacks of concrete. Paul Spitzmuller traveled with me in Spain, where we spent our days lifting enormous pitchers of sangria. Neither one of them ever passed out, which was a tremendous accomplishment, each in its own way. Tijuana has been an important part of my time here, so I'd like to thank all of those who have participated in it over the years. I'd like to especially recognize Allison for her leadership in 2006, the year the returning bus was hit with the bubonic plague. I'd like to thank Rob Janke for serving as an assistant photographer for my Street Dogs of Tijuana 2006 calendar, which you'll find available for sale in the lobby after my talk. And I'd like to thank Chris Wolf, who, in response to a rowdy neighboring camp, played bad cop to my good cop. Arguably, he overacted a little bit. Y me gustaría decir gracias a Lupe y a todos que trabajan en el mantenimiento y todos que me ayudan a practicar el español cada día. And speaking of foreign languages, I'd like to thank Carrie and Tom, who led the WASC A-Team meetings in such an efficient manner that I abandoned my search for sharp objects to impale myself on and actually tried to contribute to the meeting. I'd like to thank Christina, who remains my friend despite my recurring jabs at the WASC process. Christina is a far braver soul than I, having taken on the challenges of administration, parenting, and worm composting long before I found the courage to do so. I'd like to thank my good friends Megan and Fumi for always being there with me this year. Megan's not here right now, so thank you to Fumi. I'd like to thank Richard Neville for worrying about the same things that I worry about. Climate change, resource depletion, and how to constantly one-up another in our 10-year battle of smack talk. I'd like to thank Jimmy Niffen. Every time I think that I'm a nice person, I think of Jimmy Niffen and I realize just how far I have to go. I really hate him for that. I'd like to thank Kevin McMahon, my neighbor down the basement of O'Donnell. No matter how busy he is, he will always find the time to shoot the breeze, or to take an image of your face and paste it on the image of a flamboyantly dressed matador. You just have to ask him. I'd like to thank Patrick McChrystal and the men of Cross Country. I'd like to express my thanks for being the sort of coaches that I am proud to work with. One would not think that the hour-and-a-half bus ride to Salinas could be a delight, but hanging out with Patrick and his unique storytelling ability turns it into actually a pretty reasonable time. I'd like to thank the men of science, especially Patrick Adams for helping me overcome my jitters as a rookie teacher, and Patrick Talasfor for helping me overcome my jitters as a first-year chemistry teacher. And again, there's a million people I can thank. I feel bad cutting it off at some point, but I've been watching my time and I think I'm about there. So I'm going to just say, my good friend Gary, I spent literally days trying to come up with a good insult to slam you with, but I just didn't have the heart. So I'd just like to thank Gary for being a good friend and for constantly reminding me that the pool is not clothing optional. Final reminder, being a Bellarmine teacher is not easy. There are challenges along the way, but with the camaraderie that I feel here, all of those challenges seem pretty inconsequential. So for those mentioned and those I didn't have the time to mention, I just want to thank you for making the last 10 years an absolute delight, and I look forward to 10 more. Thank you very much.